you're too smart to be just a stupid influencer, you're a little bit pathetic and not cool enough, but I'm definitely not a believer of the law of attraction.
As some of you may know, I studied philosophy of law, and in this video I'm going to share more of my philosophy with you, and hopefully that will help you, motivate you, or inspire you in your daily life as well.
Hello, my name is Lydia, and I want to welcome you to this video. I am pretending to drink very fancy tea, but I'm actually just drinking apple juice. But let's keep that a secret between us. Because this video is going to be quite a long and chilled one, I think it's a really good idea if you grab something to drink or a snack, or both. For this video, you definitely need some fuel. Before I'm going to get into things, I quickly want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring today's video, because without them, this wouldn't be possible. I wouldn't be able to sit here and talk to you guys. I was planning on filming a very typical Q&A, answering your guys' questions. But the combination of my life experiences the past couple of weeks or months or years, together with the fact that a lot of your guys' questions were very similar, made me think. And when I think, I get very philosophical. I studied philosophy of law both in the Netherlands as well as in the US. And I do believe that philosophy is something that can help anyone. So I thought that today would be a perfect way to talk about philosophy in a more practical manner. Because one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like philosophy or feel like it's useless is because in philosophy we really talk a lot about thought experiments, about the what ifs, about the metaphysical, not about reality, practicality, or what is happening in the now. At least that is what most people think, or that is one of the misconceptions that people have about philosophy. And with this very simple Q&A, I want to show you guys that philosophy, in my case, and hopefully also at some point in your lives too, is an inevitable part. And yeah, if there's one thing that I really want to do with this video is trigger you to think. And if I did that, it would be amazing if you could leave a comment down below, because yeah, this is a little bit going out of my comfort zone and I haven't really seen any videos like this on YouTube. With that being said, I'm going to take another sip of my pretend tea, aka apple juice, and start with this video. The first topic that I'm going to be talking about is the future. I split this question in two groups. The first one was, how do I see myself in 5 or 10 years? And the second question was, what are my goals or plans for the future? So they're kind of similar in a way, but there's a little bit of a difference. So I'm going to be answering both of these questions while using my philosophical knowledge. I wanted to start with this topic of the future, because this question actually triggered me and made my brain think philosophically. A lot of the times when people ask you a question, it's not necessarily because they're really interested in you, but they're interested in what they can learn from your answer for their own lives. We like to think that, you know, everything is about us. We really like to take things personal, but most of the times people are just saying things, asking us things because it has something to do with them and it's not really about us. Often people are looking to find something that they can aspire to when hearing your answer, or things that it can relate to while hearing your answer. And with that thought, as well as the question of how do I see myself in 5 years, how do I see myself in the future, I started to understand that a lot of you are very focused on the future. My initial response to the question of where do I see myself in 5 years was, I don't know. And knowing that that was my answer, in a way, kind of made me feel embarrassed, because we humans don't like to admit we don't know something. Our society is so focused on being the best, knowing it all, having all the answers figured out, having your life figured out, that it's not necessarily considered a good thing when someone tells you, oh, but I don't know. It doesn't matter if you are in a classroom and you say you don't know, or if you're on a date and someone asks you what are your passions and you're like, I don't know. most of the time people will judge you in a negative manner. To make things even more interesting, most of the time we actually just cannot know. The future is unknown to everyone. Maybe there is a omnipotent deity, but I personally don't believe in that, but if you do, that's totally fine. But aside from that omnipotent deity, no one really knows what's going to happen. Yet we are so focused on the future, and we are also being shamed by our peers, by our society, if we openly admit that we don't know. It's never really considered a good thing. This really feels like a problem to me, like a paradox. Let's call it the future paradox. We are all focused on the future. We're all focused on our lives in 5 to 10 years, yet we all really don't know what is going to happen. And if we admit that, it's seen as a negative thing. Understanding this made me feel a little bit more comfortable about saying that I don't know where I see myself in 5 years. If I consider where I was in my life 5 years ago, in that point in life, I didn't have any ambition of ever leaving the Netherlands, let alone moving by myself to Los Angeles, leaving my whole life behind. At that point in time, I was really not even considering all of these things. So if I didn't know 5 years ago that I would be here, how do I know where I will be in 5 years from now? I mean, if we look at one of the most influential philosophers of our human history, Socrates, one of the things he said is that the only thing that I know is that I know nothing. I feel like the more knowledge we have, the more we understand that we know less about the world. Again, another paradox. This is called the Socratic paradox. But I think it is something beautiful because it doesn't make us feel embarrassed or feel like we are dumb or stupid for not knowing things. So the next time you are in a class and you don't really know an answer to the question, not because you didn't study enough, but because there's so many different options and alternatives to that question, just say, I don't know, and explain your reasoning. Same for a date with a cute guy that you have. If he asks you about your future or your passions or whatever and you don't really have a clear answer, just tell him that. I don't really know, and I think that's okay to not know. And another addition that I have to this is something that I've learned through my yoga practice. If you follow me on my Instagram especially, you will know that I did a 30 days of yoga challenge where I challenged myself to do yoga every day. For me, yoga is a workout, not only for the body, but also for the mind. And one of the practices that I've learned from yoga that I like to incorporate in my everyday life is intention setting. By setting an intention in our daily practice, we're not as much focused on result-only satisfaction. So with that I mean that we're only satisfied with ourselves once we hit that certain target, once we finish our to-do list by dedicating our action to a certain thought, to a certain person, for example, or to a certain idea that we have. The practice itself becomes important, and the practice itself becomes satisfactory to us, and not only the result. We switch our mindset from only being focused on the future to being focused on the now. Not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future, but really living in the now is something that is very hard, but once mastered is life-changing in a positive way. And another very influential philosopher during our human history, Lao Tzu, he also described this beautifully. If you are depressed, you're living in the past. If you are anxious, you're living in the future. And if you are at peace, you're living in the now. And I think that is a beautiful way to show how beautiful it is to live in the now, rather than only being focused on the future and the past. So with that, I give you guys my answer to the question of where do I see myself in 5 years. It's a very simple one. I don't know. For the second question, if I have any specific goals for myself for the future, I would like to say that I have one very specific goal, and that is to write a novel. Before I could even write, I always thought of stories in my mind, and I always wanted to escape reality by my fantasies. So being a writer was actually my dream job as a little girl, which is kind of interesting. One of the reasons why I also went to law school was because I loved to write. And one of the reasons why I started a blog was because I wanted to write. I do feel like at some point in my life, I really want to write a novel. I do know kind of what I want to write about, and I also have written a few pages, but that's it. the second topic I want to discuss in this video is loneliness and being or feeling lonely. A lot of you guys have again asked me two questions in regards to this topic. Do I ever feel lonely? And I've received this question ever since I started living by myself, on my own, without roommates, without my mom. And then the second question is, how do I deal with loneliness? Let's start with question number one. Do I ever feel lonely? My first response to that question was kind of astonishment, because I was so surprised that people would even wonder about me ever feeling lonely. Feeling lonely is such a natural human response, such a natural human emotion and feeling to have. To me, it was kind of strange that people even would assume that maybe potentially I've never felt lonely. And then my philosophical brain started thinking again. Because just like admitting that you don't really know what you're going to do in the future, admitting that you're lonely is kind of shunned by society. Admitting that you're lonely can kind of seem like you're a little bit pathetic and not cool enough to have friends, so that's why you're lonely, so there's something wrong with you. Rather than people saying, oh, you feel lonely? Well, me too. Because loneliness has nothing to do with you being a pathetic person that is not cool enough to have friends, or it has nothing to do with you having a social life or not, because you can feel lonely and have millions of friends. You can feel lonely and have the perfect social life. And to me, loneliness is a feeling that is created because we humans are also paradoxes. We are societal creatures. We live in a society. We like to live in groups. We're not lone wolves. However, we're also very individualistic. So this combination of wanting to be part of a group, wanting to be part of a society, combined with being very individualistic people, we always feel like there's no one like us. We always feel like no one really understands how we feel. No one can look in our minds. You can know me, but you can never know the inner me, if that makes sense. And for all us astrology lovers, I love some astrology as well, your sun sign, which stands for your character and your personality, is what people know. And then you have your moon sign, which is your inner relationship, how you deal with emotions, how you are when no one is around. Well, exactly that combination is what I mean. It's the person that is part of society that everyone sees, combined with this person that we're on the inside that no one really knows and can never know, even if we wanted them to know, because it's just a relationship we have with ourselves. I feel like this paradox that we have, let's call it again the loneliness paradox, is why we do feel lonely. In a way, we want to be part of a society, but then we also feel like we're so different and so unique, and it's also society telling us there's no individual like you, we're all different, we're all unique. But that combination can kind of make us feel lonely, because we want to be part of a group, but then we're all different, so how can we be part of a group if we know that we are not alike? So to me, feeling lonely is innate to being a human being. And that's why I'm also not going to give you tips on how to combat loneliness. I'm not going to tell you to go out and meet people, not because that's not a great idea or that because you shouldn't do it, but more because I don't necessarily feel like it's a cure to loneliness, because I don't think it's curable, and I also don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Because I personally, when I feel lonely, which, I mean, in a sense we could say that it is a negative emotion, we feel like no one really gets us, we feel like no one is there for us, I like to channel that into something positive. And the way that I think about negativity and positivity is based on Taoism and Tao, which also, in my opinion, is a better way to deal with life than, for example, the law of attraction. I personally have quite the, how do you say it? I don't hate the law of attraction. I think hate is a too powerful word, and I do feel like there is some good to the law of attraction, but I'm definitely not a believer of the law of attraction. And let's set things straight, the law of attraction is not a law, it's a pseudoscience, it's not a science, it's not a law. And that's also what I find very upsetting, because whenever it comes to philosophy, one of the things that every philosopher is trained to is to reason with logic and to be able to argue following premises and following a logical conclusion that is valid and sound before claiming anything. While with the law of attraction, by claiming that it is a law, but then it actually isn't a law, I find that shady. I believe that Taoism, which is also, by the way, the philosophy that law of attraction is based on, is a way better way to look at life. Taoism is focused on the Tao. Tao is a very difficult word to translate from Chinese to English, but the best way to translate it is that it is the way or path. And only by following this Tao, this path, this natural order of the universe, we can become enlightened individuals or live a full life. That is how I personally interpret it. For those of you guys that are familiar with the pyramid of Maslow, that would be the highest level of the pyramid, self-actualization. That, in my opinion, is living a full life. But that's just my personal view. Explaining Tao is very hard because it is not a concept, it is not a thing, yet it is present in our aliveness. It's eternally nameless and it contrasts between all the things that manifest in our lives. It's not there, it's not a thing, yet it is present in our aliveness. That thought, combined with the natural dynamic balance of the positive and the negative, is what Tao is. And I want to focus a little bit more on that last part, because that last part, the eternal dynamic balance between the positive and the negative, is how I see life. The law of attraction claims that if you think positively, you attract positive thoughts, and if you think negatively, you attract negative thoughts. But I don't necessarily think that's true. I don't think because you think negatively, negative things happen to you. And I don't think that if you think positively, positive things happen to you. I don't think those two things are completely separate. I think positivity can become something negative, and negativity can become something positive. I think we have the power to turn one around in the other because it is an eternal dynamic balance and not a hard line between the two. There's a symbol that describes this perfectly, and if you know what symbol I mean, then let me know in the comments down below. But yeah, I'm just curious if you guys know, but it's a symbol that everyone knows. But I don't feel a lot of people know the true meaning of that symbol. And the symbol is yin-yang. Everyone knows the yin-yang. There is a white part, the light, positive part, and there is a dark part, the black, negative part. Yet, within the light, there's a dot of blackness, and within the dark, there's a dot of lightness. Both are interconnected with each other. You don't have complete positivity without something negative, and you don't have complete negativity without something positive. And that is because our life is filled with positive and negative. If you feel lonely and you consider that something negative, that doesn't mean you can't channel that into something positive. So whenever I, for example, feel lonely in a very practical sense, let's go down from the metaphysical to the physical, I love to write. I love to do something creative. I always feel like I think most creatively when I feel lonely, when I feel sad. So whenever I focus that energy, that loneliness, into something productive, into something creative, I start forgetting that it was a negative thing to begin with, because I'm always very happy channeling it into something that I love. So that would be my advice to you. How to deal with loneliness, question number 2, is by channeling that negative emotion into something positive for you. The last topic that I'm going to be talking about is career. Our future is intertwined with our career. Those things at this point in our day and age are almost synonyms, I think. Aside from what I'm going to do in 5 years and where my future is going, the other question that I receive a lot, and sometimes it's also a little bit more of an insult, I would say, than a genuinely asked question, is: will I ever become a lawyer? Will I ever consider a legal career? Do I feel like I wasted my time and money going to law school? Things like, you are too smart to be just a stupid influencer, you're wasting your potential, you're wasting your life, you're disappointing because you became a basic Instagram girl instead of a prestigious lawyer. Very, very interesting comments. And I am not going to sit here and just pretend as if that didn't hurt me. It definitely took a lot of time for me to just sit here and be very comfortable and chill hearing those things out loud. The mind is a very powerful thing. So even things that can hurt us in the past, that doesn't mean that they will hurt us in the now and in the future as well. I want to start this theme by this quote. I later on discovered that this person was actually born in the Netherlands, but he was Austrian, and he was a very famous poet and writer, very influential during the Second World War and post-Second World War. And this quote says, "I did not want to be anything, and naturally I did not want to turn into a mere profession. All I ever wanted was to be myself." And there has been no other quote that describes my career journey more accurately, I would say, than that quote. Another societal norm that I definitely have struggled with was the fact that I never felt like I could fit in a box. And this box could be a personality box. It was also ethnicity. I was born in the Netherlands, but I wasn't ethnically Dutch. But then I wasn't Russian enough for Russian people. So I also didn't really fit into an ethnical box. And this was also the box when it came to career choices, because I was going to law school, yet I was running my own business, being an influencer, and having a web shop for stationery. I always struggled with this, and sometimes I was very hard on myself, because in a way it feels great to follow societal norms, because once you fit into society, people don't really ask questions. Because if you fit into society, you're the norm. And you don't have to explain yourself to others because you're doing what society tells you to do. So I definitely had my fair share of trying to fit in these boxes, but then I also realized that if I would completely commit to these boxes, I was not making myself happy, I was just following a societal norm. And that's also how I see education. I never saw my law degree as a career path. I saw my law degree as knowledge. That's why I also don't feel like I ever wasted time or money studying law, because studying law has been one of the best things I've ever done for myself. I've learned so much, I've grown so much, and also in a practical sense, so much of the knowledge and the skills that I learned in law school, I'm using every day. The way I read, the way I argue, the way I talk, the way I go through business contracts if I have collaborations, the way I handled my visa and immigration issues, even though I didn't study immigration. I mean, I can go through whatever law and pretty much grasp its essence and see what's important, because that's how I've been trained. Yes, I'm not doing a traditional career, and the career that I'm following is not necessarily prestigious, because let's be honest, people really look down on influencers, and I even want to say that in a way it's misogynistic. I think the influencer industry is one of the few industries that is female dominated, and I think that is a good thing. I think that's great. I am a true feminist, and I feel like there needs to be more females in whatever industry, but if there is an industry that is filled with a majority of females naturally, I don't think we should name those women basic Instagram bitches or just fake influencers. I'm not saying there's no negative side to influencing. I totally see that. There's definitely drama going on. There's definitely, things that could be better, but I think that's the case in any industry. And I do feel like influencers are mainly being put out negatively and not necessarily positively, because what I see, a lot of these women have their own income, provide for themselves, have their own business, learn a lot about being independent and self-sufficient. A lot of these women stick together and help other women by, for example, a female photographer photographing a female blogger, and the female blogger giving her exposure to the photographer. And in that way, there's a very supportive and empowering connection between two women. And I think that is something that has not been a big part of our history and our culture. So I do feel like, yes, there are totally negative sides to Instagram and influencing, but I think we really forget that there are also positive aspects. I definitely really want to push myself to show even more of these positive aspects, and that's also one of the reasons why I'm doing this video, if that makes sense. So yeah, I never saw myself as a basic Instagram girl. Instead of that, I saw someone that decided not to have a typical 9-to-5 career, which is honestly great if you do, and I have a lot of respect for people that do a 9-to-5. It's really hard, but I just knew that I would never be happy with a 9-to-5. I always wanted to be my own boss, and I do have to say that there have been circumstances in my life that made me choose certain things that if life was different, I would potentially have done differently. The very expensive educational system here in the US, if it wasn't that expensive, I would totally do like a philosophy degree part-time, but I just can't afford another degree. So yes, totally. Again, I don't know where I'm going to be in 5 years. Maybe in 5 years I'm like, screw it all, I want to go back to school. Well, that's what I'm gonna do then. But right now, that's a decision that I made, and I'm very happy with that decision. And that's the last thing that I wanted to say, is that people are worried about my career, people are worried about my future, about my plans, about if I feel lonely. And I think that these things are all societal pressures, societal norms of things that we need to have in order and we need to have in a certain way, because if we don't, we're not happy. I had to make sacrifices that made me very unhappy. But in the end, I knew that what I was doing was because what the end result was, living here in the US, running my own business, being independent, not having a typical 9-to-5, being in this super crazily privileged position, and I just knew that I didn't want to let go of that chance, and that chance would maybe go in a few years, and then I had to figure out whatever I would want to do then, but that's for later. I'm not worried about that now. And the reason why I wanted to go to law school was because I love to write and I love to argue, and because I wanted to help people. YouTube, Instagram gave me a platform to be heard and to tell you guys these things that I want to share with you. Like, I hope that, you know, we're kind of at the end of my talk, but I really hope that whatever I told you, that it's something new that you haven't heard before, that it is inspiring you. And that's why I don't see myself as an online influencer. I always call myself an online inspirer. I also want to show you guys that if you like aesthetics, that doesn't mean you don't have any, you know, substance. That's kind of the end, a little bit of a messy end. I tried to make this video as structured as I could, but yeah, let me know if you enjoyed these. I guess this is another episode of philosophy talk. If you guys like this and you want me to talk more about philosophy, then leave me a comment down below about a topic or a question or an issue that you're dealing with. Like, you can also just send me, you know, a situation you're dealing with. There's so many other life problems that philosophy can have, in my opinion, a life-changing and positive effect on. And before I end this video, I quickly wanted to thank you today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. Squarespace is an amazing all-in-one platform for anyone that is looking to create their own website. Squarespace has blogging tools that can help you tell your story like I just did, share your updates, and post your photos and videos on a scheduled basis that suits your needs. Squarespace social media tools authenticate with your social media profiles so that you can embed your content on various platforms without having to correct links, titles, or tags. Using Squarespace's email campaigns feature, you can make your email stand out and unify your voice across your website and brand emails. Go to squarespace.com/LilyLike to start your free trial and get 10% off your first purchase. Thank you again so much, and I'll talk to you very soon in a new video. Bye bye!